How are you?
Good.
Thanks for meeting me over here. Let's sit down.
Of course.
Let's sit down. So, you know, you are a tech goat, but I don't know if everybody knows about you. But you're big on Twitter, you're big on LinkedIn, and you're really big like everywhere, even on like the Facebook groups and stuff like that. You know, people talk about you and they respect you.
Yeah.
So if people don't know who you are, this is Teneika Askew.
Hi, everyone.
You have been in tech for a very long time, and I really just kind of want to get into your story. Like, I don't want to tell everybody everything about you, but I want to get into your story. Like, you know, like where are you from, and you know, what's your background, and how did you even get into tech?
Yeah, so what's really interesting, if you would have asked my mom, I would have been a nurse, because she was a nurse, so she said and taught me everything about nursing. But that just wasn't my passion, and she knew that after taking the computer away from me, like every day. Every day I would get on the computer, making mixtapes, you know, about LimeWire, figuring out how to re-image it because LimeWire was giving us viruses. Just being very savvy at such a young age. I didn't realize like that was tech, but making MySpace pages, making the backgrounds for everyone, I kind of started there. But when I got into college, I went for nursing because that's what my mom knew, that's what I was taught, and my teachers kind of was like, this ain't, you don't like it, do you?
Yeah.
So that's literally where I started. I had a pivotal moment. I remember it was 4th of July in Savannah. I went to visit a friend, see some fireworks. Someone there, literally, random lady, talked to her, and she said, something was wrong with her phone. And at that time, I worked for Best Buy Mobile. I worked there 5 years. Loved just figuring out phones, the newest technology.
You were in like the Geek Squad?
No, I was in Best Buy Mobile, so I had to know about every phone that came out.
Yeah.
Every new feature. I love like demoing the phones, telling people about it, and it was just like, it was really dope at the time. So collaborating with Best Buy Mobile a lot.
Okay.
But yeah, so all in all, I met this lady, and she just kind of really set me straight and told me about her life as a social worker, and how she got there, how her husband was like a nuclear engineer in his path, and she just really poured into me at that moment. Random event at 4th of July, and I realized like I'm going back to school, and I'm not looking back. I'm not looking back on nursing as something that I failed at, but more so something that I tried and I realized it wasn't for me, so I'm going to move forward with tech.
Yeah. So like, I think people need to understand like it's okay to pivot, right? Like it's okay to think you want something or been doing something your whole life, and then you decide, hey, you know, I want to go in a completely different direction, right? Whether it's something that you enjoy or whether you're doing it for like the money, right? Like, you got to be okay with pivoting. So I like that you did that. So when you went back to school, like, what did you go back to school for?
Well, I started in nursing. Then the next path was psychology, because I thought I really love helping people. I really enjoy it. I really like talking about like how the brain works. And that lady kind of was like, it's not psychology. Yeah. So I actually ended up moving into computer science.
Oh, okay.
And I really enjoyed it, but what I learned in computer science, I was the only woman in my class, and I was doing so much work that I realized, okay, when I got to the MIS classes where it was about databases, setting them up, putting them together, all of that, I enjoyed it to the point where I'm doing that work in my computer science class. And I'm just like, in computer science class, like, let me get this done so I could just do this database stuff. So I've realized that wasn't where my heart was, and I kind of pivoted to information systems.
Oh, okay. So that was your intro into like data science and data analytics.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I guess like, so fast forward into where you like graduated college, or during college, did you do internships or anything like that?
Ooh, girl. I remember internships being this thing that you, like, only the best of the best could get them, and that's what we were told, you know, if you didn't get an internship, you weren't going to go anywhere. So I actually enrolled in a bunch of research programs at school so that I could be closer to those individuals who were getting emails about internships that I didn't, you know, teachers get the emails all the time and they refer students, but they refer the students that they collaborate with.
Yeah, so, and the students that they like.
Exactly.
Right. So
I learned that.
That's a whole nother, you know, topic, right? Like, that's a whole nother topic.
Building the relationships with the teachers is, look, they have to do extracurricular activities too. So when you're willing to help them do their research and stuff like that, it really does show up in a different light to them. So I ended up going through a program called Inroads, and Inroads helped me secure my internship at IBM, where I was a software engineer, and then I ended up getting extended to a co-op. So I went from a 3-month internship to about 9 months, and then I switched into a kind of like information assurance engineer role with a defense organization. And then from there, like that, it was just, I felt like I was a sophomore going into a junior, and then that junior year I was stressed because I was like, I have no internships. But that junior year, it was like, God just said, all right, I got you back to back to back.
Yeah.
So I went from the IBM one, got extended, flew into that one. That one ended kind of abruptly because they got acquired by Lenovo, then got awarded the one with the defense organization, and then came into the AT&T opportunity because they emailed me last year, and I just kept in touch with that recruiter and that hiring manager. And when I emailed back, he was like, oh, I remember you. So he was like, we have one more week of interviews. So that internship, I really took the opportunity to learn more about consulting, and that's why I entered my career as a consultant from an organization called TMCF. And I went to their Leadership Institute and had a couple offers, and I chose Booz Allen.
Nice.
That's where I got into government consulting.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so if people don't know, all of those are major companies, right? IBM's major, Booz Allen is major. They're a major government contractor, really government consulting company, and you know, that's amazing. So let's get into money, because that's what everybody cares about, right? So like, what type of money were you making when you came out of school working for Booz Allen?
Yeah, so I actually had a conversation recently. So I'll start with my internships because someone asked me. So when I started my internship, I was making my first one $21 an hour. And then I had the defense one, which was a little bit less. This was about $16 an hour. And then I went back into $19 an hour with AT&T. For me being in college, that changed my trajectory, and I doubled up on my classes so I could finish a year earlier because I saw what money you can make then. I also had an opportunity to work at IBM as a software engineer, but I felt like that money, they were paying $45,000, shipping people out to New Orleans, making them software engineers to like build products very quickly. But for me, 45 just wasn't it when I was seeing 45 as an intern. Right, exactly. So, yeah, people, they sleep on the type of money that you can make in tech as an intern. So like when I talk to people and I tell them, like, even when I make my, you know, videos on social media, I'm like, hey, you know, you can get an internship, right? You can, if you decide to go back to school, your best thing to do, get an internship. And people are like, I can't live off intern money. What? Yeah, you can. Like, a lot of companies are paying like 30, 35, some paying $40 plus an hour. And that was back then. One of my roommates, his internship paid him about $15,000 for 3 months. So as a college student, that was like unheard of. Oh, we were balling as college kids. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like when you're young, making like $20 plus an hour in college, like it's nuts, you know, like you really live a different life. So like being able to be in college and have internships and make that type of money it's a blessing. Like it really is a blessing. And even if you're an adult and you're switching to getting into tech, I think people should be open to internships and also apprenticeships as well. I agree, and it also showed like if I can make this money now, why would I take a full-time offer for 45? Right. So I'm glad I waited it out as a sophomore going into my junior year. I opted not to do the IBM program, and I just did the internships and continued them, which my first job offer, I negotiated it. I received another one with IBM for 65, and I was like, okay, well, let me see what Booz Allen says, and went there, killed the interview, network. They like offered me on the spot at that event $72,500. Nice. And that's where I started my career, and from there, that's where I knew like, okay, I didn't know anything about negotiation. other than what I read online. The career services, they had negotiation prep sheets, but they, really didn't coach everyone on it, but they told you, like, go through this sheet, come back if you have any questions. But I watched a lot of YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So I negotiated to 72.5 with reload and a signing bonus of 5,000 at the time.
Nice, nice. So you really had a great start to your career. And it's funny, like, I started out at 72.5 as well.
That was the number?
Yeah, that must have been the number at that time. They're like, look, if somebody tries to negotiate, tell them 72.5.
Yep.
Like, so yeah, I started out at that same amount when I started with Raytheon as a software engineer. But so when it comes to your career, like, to where you are now, like what was how was your journey been like? I know you've been helping out people too, but what's your journey like? Because I don't think a lot of people even know what you do, since you help so many people. Like, you're online on Twitter and LinkedIn, people don't even know, like, they're like, what does Teneika do?
I know, I have like analytics and automation listed, but people see me post resources. I only used to post resources for data mostly, but I just started seeing so many other areas that were interesting, other people were asking me about. So I was like, why don't I just share it? I was on GroupMe helping people. So a friend told me to get on Twitter, and that's what happened there. But my career started as a business systems analyst. And what that essentially meant, it's a title that really meant you do anything to help support the business and the systems that help further the business or the mission. In that role, what I did was a lot of data engineer work, so I had to map different systems to each other. That meant going through the data, finding common fields, understanding the data quality, assessing which fields had poor data quality, which fields could be brought over. I did a lot of that for about 2 years. I noticed that everybody just wanted the reports out of this. They like, okay, yeah, we mapped it, but yeah, what the data telling us? What's the story behind it? And so that's where I really learned. I want to get into the reporting and analytics side because that's who is seen the most. That is what I enjoy doing. I really like consulting, like speaking to my clients a lot. So I just dive into learning it myself. So, I started in Access and Excel, but I ended up moving into what's called SAP Web Intelligence because that was the platform we were using. So learn how to build reports in Web Intelligence to the point solo where the reports were good, but I was like, hey, if you send me to this training, I could be like a rock star. So negotiated, wrote a business justification, went to this training. After that, I was killing it. I was just building reports, like just knocking them out. Every report that was in Excel, I was revamping and putting it in SAP Business Intelligence, Web Intelligence, and then moved over from Webby into doing a little bit back into doing some data engineering, process re-engineering work because the data quality is so bad. So how do you get the data quality up? You have to figure out what are the poor processes that exist that are creating that poor data quality. So went into that and then back into reporting and analytics, and then switched over to Deloitte to work for a different organization, and that's where I got into Oracle, and there I was doing something very similar, analytics, data engineering a little bit, but mostly analytics and building out these different systems to help forecast and build out congressional budgets to help the organization understand where your people are now, what does it mean, and what's the budget look like if we give them raises, promotions, essentially building a scenario forecast. And then from there I said, you know what, this wasn't for me, and I saw some work in Atlanta. I had a really good mentor. It was tough. That project was very tough for me because I wasn't supported and I wasn't getting the work that I felt like would further my career. Not to say I was above it, but I was trying to grow, and it was me doing the same things that I had been doing 3 years prior. So I made the move to Atlanta, started doing it in Microsoft, building out Power BI solutions. Took off, like asked for promotions, everything took off. When I was at Booz Allen, I was getting I had the top award in the company my second year there. So for me, having the VIP award, it made me feel like also when I got to Deloitte, like, am I not performing right? But I really had to learn for me, I needed the right support system.
Okay.
So I went there. From there, killed it. Ended up at Mozilla, head of.
So you've been to a bunch of companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been to a lot of companies. So like, I want to take a break a little bit on your career before you keep going to where you are now. But like, what type of tips can you give people who want to get into data science and data analytics? Like, I know everybody recommends like, hey, take the Google data science course, and I don't really want to say too much about them, but like, I'm not really too much of a fan of like the Google courses, like people think that you can take one Google course and just like, hey, I'm making 90K or I'm getting a job offer, that might not be what happens. So kind of like, what type of advice can you give people who want to get into data science, data analytics?
You know what, I get that question a lot, and it's really funny because everyone immediately after they ask that, they're like, should I take the Google course?
Yep.
And I say, okay, so if you take the Google course, what will it do for you? And I do think that the Google course does have added benefits. I have heard of people getting hired after taking that course, but those are the same people that have went out, updated their resume, talked about the course while they were taking the course. What did you learn? What did you do? What did you build? And they were active in the community that Google creates when you're in the course. What you really need to do to get hired is learn a skill, do the skill. So build a project. Put your project on some platform, whether it's GitHub, whether it's a website, whether it's put it on a platform and talk about what did you build, why did you build it, what problems did you solve, and how did you solve those problems. So have a brief intro to the project and have your project listed, because taking the course, you build a project. Some of them, people Google the answers. Yeah. So you're not learning.
They're doing themselves a disservice. Like, they're cheating on the course that they're trying to use to help them get a job.
Exactly. So it's not as effective, but I would say if you find programs that really do get you to the point where you are actually building projects and applying the skills that they're saying that you'll learn, that will help you further your career.
Okay. All right, so you're basically telling people they need to actually put in the work, learn the skill and apply the skill, talk about it, network. So it seems like you're really good at networking. Can you give people some networking tips too? Because like, I've seen like how much you network on social media and in person, like, what are some tips for people who are not comfortable with networking? Because a lot of people in tech aren't comfortable. What are some things that they can do to get more comfortable with networking and like just put themselves out there so they can start to further their career and maybe even just get their foot in the door into tech?
First thing, be intentional. So if you know that you are not comfortable networking, but you want to go to an event for some purpose, set your goal beforehand. Like, look, I need to leave this event having talked to 3 people. And that'll push you enough to reach out, pop in a conversation maybe where other people are talking. And when you pop in those conversations where maybe someone else might be talking and you just start listening, more than likely they're going to recognize like someone's here and say, hey, and then it'll spark a conversation with you. Also, have your conversation starter. So whatever you feel is the most comfortable for you to start a conversation, keep that handy and make sure you reference that when you're at the event, because that's something that you're most comfortable with. When you're in DC, it was always like, what do you do? Where do you work?
Right. People on Twitter, they always say that. Like, I hate DC. People always asking you, what do you do for work? Yeah, that's kind of like the icebreaker out there. Everybody wants to know, like, what do you do in your day-to-day? Because, like, a lot of people are doing a lot of cool stuff in DC. So they're interested in knowing what you do.
I built such a big network in DC. I used to refer people. I was making my salary off of referrals.
Oh, hold on. We got to get in that. You said you were doing what? You were making your salary off referrals?
Yeah, so my first year's salary essentially was made in 2 years on referrals, because I would network with so many people in DC that I was in group meetings, group chats. I was out telling people to come out to different events. We was having recruiting events. I'm like, come out. People would reach out and like, hey, is your company hiring? And I'm talking to them. I'm also at the company very involved with the proposal work, right? So I want to know what everyone's doing at work too, because then when someone approaches me, I'm like, hey, I know someone who's looking for a job or looking to move into this. So I was often like, oh, that's interesting. Have you considered doing this work at a government consulting firm?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people were like, okay, and let's see what they say. So I was referring, I think when I left, I remember looking at the number, I had like 280 referrals, and about 30% of them got hired.
Wow.
Something like that. And then you have the ones that don't count because I told them to come to a recruiting event, so recruiting takes credit. But yeah, it was just money coming. Like, and at that time, I was just like, oh wow, this is good money. But yeah, and then rinse and repeat kind of at Deloitte as well. But it's networking, right? It's getting to understand what do people do, and I know people hate that question, but it was so relevant for also me to experience, what do you do? I didn't know this was possible. I didn't know this was a role.
Right.
So when a lot of people come to me, they're like, how do you know about these roles? Because I talk to a lot of people about what they do.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing for you to do is just to talk to people. Like you have to, right? Talk to people at work, talk to people at these events. Like, just get to know them, ask them questions, right? The more questions you ask, the more information you'll get, and the bigger your network will grow.
Oh yeah. That is, I remember when LinkedIn came out with the QR code. Before they came out with the QR code, I had my own QR code on a business card. Oh. And I was like throwing that business card out every conference, every event. Everybody was like so shocked at the time because nobody had QR code.
Nobody was doing that, right?
Right.
So you were ahead of the curve, like, because it really took America like 10 years to get on a QR code. It wasn't until the pandemic to where we was like, all right, man, we throwing a QR code on the tables. Y'all just gonna have to get with it because menus are done.
Exactly. But that's how I built my. I mean, I'm like, hey, QR code. Here's my card. So it was really critical. I tell people all the time that when you go to events, you know, be intentional, be purposeful. You know what you want to get out of it. So make sure you honor that goal for yourself, because when you go to an event and you might talk to people, but you're not really saying anything, or you just stick to the group that you know. What did you get out of that event?
Right. Yeah, that's true. So can we talk a little bit about like the job you're doing now? Because I have a few questions I want to ask about it. Like, can we talk about like where you're at now? Because you work for so many different companies.
I had a conversation with a previous manager I had in consulting, and he went to the civilian side. And he was like, hey, would you ever think about becoming a civilian? And I was like, interesting. What tech stack y'all using? Because I know the tech stack that was being used before, and I don't know if I want to jump back into antiquated technologies. And he was like, we on cloud. No, we're using cloud technologies. It's up there. We're in this platform called Advana. And I was Googling it as he was talking. I was like, whoa, okay.
They made a lot of upgrades.
Yeah. So I had that conversation. It was essentially a direct hire opportunity. Had an interview. Interview went well. Got hired I was starting like the next month and a half.
Yeah. So if people don't know about direct hire basically means that you're able to expedite the hiring process. It's like you're applying to a regular job that's not for the government, right? So it's like much faster. You can get hired within like a month.
Yes.
So versus it could really take like 6 months getting a job with the federal government if they're being slow with it.
They have a rec out right now for product managers, and it's taking so long for people to get hired just because there's so many agencies looking to hire. And there's so much talent out there right now that everyone's like battling and competing for the same talent, and sometimes the systems can be so slow. It's just the way that it works when you're working with multiple agencies, especially for people to get hired. So you always want to look at, do these direct hire opportunities exist? Because I've seen people, you know, I share with you, I'm like, this girl got hired off her resume.
Right, yeah.
That's crazy. So I was like, oh wow, I didn't know it could be this quick. But what I'm doing now is working as a group product manager. So I'm over the data science group. And within this group, we build machine learning models for the overall Navy. Specifically, we work within the financial function, and we get essentially customers from all over the Navy who come submit a use case. The use case may be, hey, can you build a machine learning model to predict when we have an incident that happens? Can you build a machine learning model that detects when we have errors in military pay. And so these models essentially get deployed either as a solution into an application, a dashboard, or as a standalone process for someone to review.
Okay. All right. So why did you go back to working for the federal government when everybody's like, nobody wants to work for the federal government because the salaries are so low? Like, why did you end up going back, and what is your grade with the government?
Okay, so if you go into the government, a lot of people don't know that they'll match your industry pay.
Yep.
Someone matched and exceeded, so that's what happened to me. They matched and exceeded it. And so when I came in, I had a good conversation, and the conversation I had with the SCS, it was very good. He was open to matching the pay. I also asked for a sign-on bonus, and they didn't even know how to do it. Which is not common with the federal government. Yeah, they don't really give sign-on bonuses. So that just shows you, like, you know, what type of skills you have in your background. Because I've never heard of the federal government giving a sign-on bonus before. I went through the OPM documentation, and they were like, "This doesn't exist," and I went and
found it, highlighted it, hey,
back
right
in
there.
An email,
yep.
Like, here it is, this site, this link. Here's also what it states for this, and I was like, oh, okay. The HR team was kind of like, okay, we doing a lot here. Where's she gonna sign? So that's what took so long. I probably would have been in like a month, but I was like, okay, match and bonus. And then I knew the manager that I would be working for. That was a big thing. I had went through such poor leadership, good leadership, that I knew I didn't want to go back to poor leadership as well. And you just don't know where you're going to end up when you get a new job either. And then specifically, the skill set that's needed to operate the stack that they had was something that I wanted to build.
Okay.
Because when I had interviewed with previous companies, I would get offers, but the offers wouldn't be for my experience level. You're offering me at the beginning of the band, and I know you are because I talk to people. Yeah. But they're like, this is such a great offer, and I'm like, no. Right. Like, a principal is not making $300K total comp. They making like $400, $500K.
Yeah, right.
And so
they were trying to lowball you.
They were trying to lowball
you really gotta do your research, and that's why it's important to talk to people, because the numbers that you see on Glassdoor and stuff, they're not always accurate. Nope. So like, if you didn't talk to people, you wouldn't have known that you were getting lowballed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I said, well, truthfully, a lot of two of the hiring managers specifically came to me. You know, they usually don't debrief you if you don't accept or don't get the role. I didn't get a role on one, I declined another one, and the hiring manager still came back to me and was like, look, come back, build your skills in this area, and let's see what happens after that. And I was like, well, I think that's a really good opportunity area, right? When you look at the roles, I'm aiming for stretch roles. I'm not aiming to be expert in the role, and what I do now, I'm aiming to be in a different space. So at these stretch opportunities, I need to be able to speak to this type of work more. And I know I could do it, but these tech companies weren't giving me the light of day, or they were like, yeah, you can do it, but we ain't gonna pay you that. And I'm like, I'd rather, one, the economy isn't really in a good spot. I'd rather have a little bit more security in where I'm going, as well as have the salary that I'm content with and I enjoy. And I'm like, okay, on this salary, I can live a great life. Right. So for me, going in and accepting an offer, I knew I would always be fighting for a raise or that opportunity to get a promotion.
Yeah.
That
Versus
would
with the
put
federal
me in
government.
a bad headspace at work.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be there.
Right. So what's your grade? What's your pay grade with the federal government right now?
I am 15.5.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
So you are a GS-15 step 5. How old are you?
I'll be 34 this month.
That's crazy. So GS-15 step 5 at 33 years old, and like, that is an accomplishment that, you know, a lot of people can't say that they've done it. There are some people who do it in DMV, of course, but you know, that's unheard of. There's some people who work 30 years in the government and they never make it to like GS-12 or 13. So for you to be all the way at the highest grade, you know, are you interested in going SCS?
That's a good question. I look at a lot of I have a really good team. So my team lets me I have a lot of rain and exploring. So my SCS has let me follow him for a day, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, that SCS work is different. It's
different.
I don't know. Do you wanna be that like tied into work? Like it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work and responsibility. So
it's a lot of responsibility, less technical for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm there yet, because I still in my day-to-day love jumping in the code sometimes. And I don't know if I'm quite there to the point where I say I'll do this tomorrow. And I think that for the people that they're looking for, they're looking for people that are just willing to like drop doing code. Some of the leadership that I'm working with now, I'm working on building policy, especially around AI, and I'm learning a lot about how that works. And a lot of SCSs I know have done it a lot. And so I'm learning a lot now. I think it maybe, but I don't know. I've seen the work and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, facts. So to me, you've done like, in my mind, what is the ideal way to navigate federal government and the government contractor space. I personally think it's best to get an internship with the federal government just to have it on your resume, then switch over to government contractor, and then get paid the money, get more experience, and then go back to the federal government and then just kind of like make your way through your career. Some people coast it all the way to the end. Some people continue to, move up the ranks, but I think you've definitely done it the right way. But I want to talk a little bit about your personal brand. Like, how much do you think that your personal brand has helped out with like your career growth? And then also, like, I know you did the interview with Salary Transparent Street, and they didn't really like show the money that you're making from like brand deals and stuff. Like, can we talk about that?
So, personal brand started at Booz Allen.
Yeah.
When I was at Booz Allen, I was helping, again, I was getting all these referrals in, right? So the recruiters were always bringing me to the recruiting events because I had built up such a big personal brand from my project work on staff. I'm talking about the work, I'm talking about what's exciting, I'm getting awards for the work that I'm doing, so everyone wants me on their project. That translated to outside of work, I knew what I was doing, I could speak to it, and I could also identify people who had transferable skills. Whereas a lot of recruiters, they don't necessarily know what a transferable skill may look like. I built that brand up to the point where I was aware of like, you've worked here, built out some Excel files to do Scrum work, but it's not really Scrum work. You can be a project manager for us, right? Some people have told me how they built out Excel files to manage like their household, and we've hired them as project managers. So there is so much that I had to go through from learning that, building my brand. I had a really good mentor the first day I got there. I messaged her, my team was like, you could email her. Like, I'm like, she's a principal. I'm level 1, like she up there, and they're like, email her.
Yeah, people don't know that. Like, so I had an internship at Northrop Grumman, right? I literally emailed the cybersecurity director. She was a black woman, her name was Sean Purvis, and I emailed her and was like, hey, I'm interested in cybersecurity, like, can we have a talk? Can we get on the phone? Like, she was like, just come to my office. I work in the Tyson's office. Just come over here. We'll have lunch together. You literally can just email people. Like, you can't be afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody internally or send an email to somebody internally, because it's okay. Like, that's the importance of like, talking and communicating and networking in your career.
It's critical, because that one person ended up, she said she had a couple people that reached out. So we ended up creating this like sister circle of women who came together to meet with her on occasion. She meet with us one-on-one. I still talk to her to this day. I've partnered with her on different opportunities. Some of the opportunities that I've done on side projects outside of work as well. So so what she told me, building your brand and making sure your brand is seen by people who don't look like you, people who look like you, and people who are way smarter than you. And so I really emphasize like showcasing my work and people knowing what I do. So internally, you knew what work I did because I was telling everybody, I was getting awards, and I was sharing my work. I was also working with that recruiting team to build dashboards. So I wanted to learn different platforms. I wanted to learn Tableau. I wanted to learn Power BI. I couldn't do it on my project work. I was working outside of my project to build those dashboards so that they knew that, oh, go to Teneika for this. This is what Teneika does. Excuse me. So after that, I became known for being BI, analytics, storytelling, all of that. And so when I went over to Deloitte, same thing. I ended up moving into that same space of Power BI, and when I got there, I did the same thing. Like I became known. I did road shows, projects, speaking events, engagements, and just to the point where people knew your name. Because if people don't know your name, when you go up for promotion, when you go up for raises, they're like, who? Okay, so what do they do? All right, sounds good, sounds good. All right, so what we giving them, like the 3 out of 4? And then you're like, you gotta have somebody that also advocates for you, because you like, yo, she done did a road show. She did the speaking engagement. She was the reason we won this $20 million contract. She did you have to build your way up so that everyone knows your name outside of the work you're doing just in your silo project. So Deloitte, you couldn't really be on social media like that. I feel like there was all these restrictions.
Yeah, they were real strict.
So I wasn't really on LinkedIn or anything until I left Deloitte. And once I left Deloitte, I just started doing that same thing I was doing internally on LinkedIn, talking about projects, talking about the certifications I was getting, how I was studying, what I was doing. And that's where I really just started picking up momentum on being in data. And I got a lot of opportunities. I reached out to someone from Microsoft on LinkedIn about a report they did, and she responded, circled back with, and asked me to interview for her like 3 times. So it was really building yourself up, because then she knew how I was just from my LinkedIn presence.
Right.
And that's how a lot of people also know me for resources. But before resources, people just knew me from data.
Yeah, just from being that girl in data.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about like the brand deals and stuff like that. You want to talk about the brand deals?
Yeah, so how that works is I actually started sharing all of these resources, and it's crazy because there's a lot of companies that reach out to me and I still say no, because everyone has a program, a boot camp or something, and you're like,
I turn a lot down.
I vet everyone, so that means I'm reading your website. There's some programs I've read their website and I'm like, I'm confused. So if I'm confused, the audience that I have is going to be confused. So, I haven't posted some of them, and some of them have reached out to me like, hey, we have this program. I'm like, hey, just some feedback, and they've changed it up. So from that though, and from the personality I have online, personality I am in person, a lot of people have reached out to me, but specifically I've worked with a lot of companies from the lens of those companies that are really looking at opportunities to further people's career through certifications or trainings, or get them to events. So like AWS, ISC, who is the company that I just did? So AWS, ISC, ServNow.
I'm like, how you forget about ServNow? Like, they flew us to Vegas together. Like, they flew us out to Vegas. How you forget about them?
There are so many companies, because I'm forgetting, because I'm like, I go through these emails and I'm like,
There's so many of them,
Yeah, and you really have to look at like who's doing the work, and so a lot of it is asking other people who've gone through the program too. So when they come at you, one thing I've also learned is people gonna get lowballed. There was a girl on Twitter who told us about the rates and how people get lowballed, especially black people, all the time.
Yeah.
And so she was saying, whatever you're telling people, just throw out there 4 times that amount.
Yeah.
And so one time
you gotta go way higher, and then they'll come back and they'll be like, hey, like either this is our budget, or they'll be like, this is the max that we can pay.
Exactly.
And if you're okay with that, you're like, all right, cool, I'll take it.
Exactly. So when you get people, at first it would be like $3,000-$4,000, and then you just like, okay, she said 4 times that. All right, let's start at 25, and then they're like, okay, well, we could do 22. you, and you like, what?
Right, like, oh, you gonna pay me $22,000?
Right.
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm like,
Okay, cool.
Okay, and so I never did video until ServNow, and I wasn't even paid to do video, but I enjoyed
making it
just because I just went in and I was like, okay, this isn't that bad, but it was just really cool to show people what you could do at a conference like that. That was my first time going there.
I know, me too. We both was in there. I'm like, all right, this is my first time doing it. They're like, you want to interview this person? You want to interview these people? All right, whatever.
Exactly.
I'll do it. Like, okay, cool. But I really like the brand deals, and I really like going to like the tech conferences and capturing the overall conference and talking to people who attended. I thought that was a lot of fun.
I think it definitely was fun. The other opportunity areas are when these deals come, I think reaching out to companies to share that you do this thing and you've been doing this thing. That's the area where I'm like, I need to do more of that.
Me too.
Yeah.
I don't do any outreach. Everything that I've had has all been inbound. So I plan on start doing outreach in a couple of weeks, just because I want to be ready for 2024.
I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an area where I've definitely been like, I have the metrics, I have the numbers, and I've seen it. And a lot of people have reached out and they're like, why? I'm surprised you're not getting paid to do this. And God just like threw it all in my lap in 1 year, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know this was a thing. I'm just like sharing these resources. So very blessed to have those opportunities. Built out my basement done. It's been rented out. I was like, car about to be paid off.
Car about to be paid off on brand deals.
Exactly.
Yeah. Off of these brand deals and working in tech, that's been able to pretty much completely change your life. But I want to know, what's one piece of advice that you can give to people who are interested in getting in tech? I know you said they were mad on your salary transparency episode. Like, you just said people need to Google, but let's get something a little bit different. What's something actionable that people can do?
So the reason I said Google is because you really need to have that critical thinking skill set to be able to say, I don't know this and I need to figure it out. The biggest thing I think people could do is when they have an opportunity to enter into something, go on YouTube, find out how many people have done it, look up day in the life videos, and then figure out, make a game plan on I'm an engineer in nature. How do I back my way into getting to this path? So if that is really taking the time to understand the career field, what are the different areas, use job descriptions as your roadmap and say, these are the skills that I need to learn. How am I going to learn those skills? Don't just read about it, apply it, talk about it. When you start to do that, when you read, you're learning, you're ingesting it. But when you talk about it, you're learning more. You're able to articulate it in a way that you probably haven't never done before. When you are building projects, now you're able to bring depth to your conversation. So I tell people, read, write, learn, right? Read about it, write about it, and you'll learn so much more than you've ever learned before, because you're now sharing that with a different audience, a different skill set. And a lot of people will stop saying, well, I shared a lot and I didn't get any likes on my post. And I was like, I was sharing all the time. Whether it's 10 likes or not, you're gonna know I did it. And that's what really pushed me in my career. No matter what, I'm gonna still talk about it. Even if that project was something that you may have seen as like very small. When I went into my first interview with Booz Allen, that small project was what got me my job. We literally talked about that one project that I built because they thought building an app to detect fraud and unemployment to a company that's a government consulting firm where they're building this every day, that was major. So when you look into going into tech, don't just admire it, aspire to be in there. Actually do the work to get in by learning more about it, reading it, writing it, summarize. I tell people today I learned are really important for you personally, but also for you to be able to speak to it at a different level. So that's what I would offer, because I've seen a lot of people come in, and I've seen a lot of people, I share programs, as you know, a lot, and people come back to me and they're like, I didn't get in, I don't understand how to get in. I'm like, hey, from this message thread 6 months ago, I told you to do this program, learn Python, learn SQL, did you do any of these? And no. So guess what? The people who did are getting in. People who actually did the work to learn SQL, learn Python, they're passing the assessments. Don't think the program gonna come around again, and if you don't do the work, you're gonna be in the same spot.
Right.
So do the work, read about it, write about it, and really engulf yourself in that space. Because once you do that, you niche down and you know what you know. Can't nobody tell you otherwise. You can't tell me I don't know data science. You can't tell me I don't know analytics. You can't try me on these different levels because I know my shit.
Right.
Like that's just what it is.
Yeah.
So you can come to me and say, well, we don't really think you're at this level, and I'm gonna be like, well, I surpassed that level, and I'll show you how. Come back to me in 6 months.
Yeah. So, all right. So those are major gems that people can walk away with, right? Read, write, and learn. So if you walk away with anything from this, you need to actually be taking action. So that's going to be the end of this episode, A Day in My Tech Life, featuring Teneika Askew. Where can they find you at on social media and LinkedIn?
So my LinkedIn is Teneika Askew, so TENEIKA My social media is all Teneika Ask_YOU, just to play on my name.
Yeah.
But that's where you'll find me on all platforms.
All right, thank you for coming out and having this conversation with me. I'm so glad you came out. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and tune into the next episode. See you.
This is dope.